Alright, hello and welcome to Plugin Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugin Along, we worked on my new Herbalism Helper plugin to help out with herbalism in North Ithilien and the Wastes. And today we're going to try to show the possible loot in the window that we made last time, instead of just in the standard chat channel. So, as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions about plugins specifically, or LOTRO in general. And in the meantime, let's do a very fast recap. Whoops, wrong button. That's the button. Okay, so, where are we? Who are we? What are we? Let me actually load up two plugins here. I'm going to load up Titan Bar, and I'm going to load up Herbalism Helper. Okay, so if you are in the Wastes or in North Ithilien, you're going to notice that you're going to find herbs on the ground. So we're going to go take a look at those. Dodger fell in chat says hello, hello. And hello to anyone else who's watching but hasn't said anything yet. So there are 7 elixirs that you can extract from plants in North Ithilien and the Wastes. The 3 basic ones that you start getting in North Ithilien are Crimson, Umber, and Verdant. There are 2 more that you can find only in the Wastes. Those are Golden and Violet. And then finally, there are special ones, Amber and Sapphire, that you can rarely find in any of the plants here. Holy moly. Oh, you're not. Sorry. Looked like another dagger lad scrap deposit, but it was just a mortar archer. Camouflaged. Okay. So we're going to grab this while we're looking around. So we just ran past one of them, a horsetail. When we click on it, what we know is that by default that will give 2 umber extract. However, I have a Fateful Toolkit on, and so the plugin is adapting for that. So just looking at it like this, we can see 2 files of umber extract. We know with the Fateful Toolkit, I'm going to get 3 files of umber extract. So come on over here, loot that. Bam, there's my 3 files. And the goal is just to transform that into this visual representation here. The next one, this is going to be 3 to 5 files of Violet. That is 2 to 4 originally. But it's a random number in there. It was 4. Okay, nothing surprising there. And that's what we're doing today, is transforming this textual knowledge of what we're getting into that visual update up here. So you click on a Wraith Scowl, and it's just going to show you what you're going to get, or the ranges for what you can get. 2 to 3 files of Violet. It was 2. Okay. So we're going to be hanging out here in the Wastes because I need lots of Violet and Golden extract to fuel my journal buying tendencies for the Host of the West sub-factions. And if anyone has any questions about that, I think I've kind of figured out what's going on here with the Host of the West sub-factions. Certainly the first few times I was here, I didn't feel comfortable. I just knew I was getting these things, these Daggered Lad armor scraps or the Onyx, and I didn't understand why, or why it wasn't sellable, or what was up with them. So now I have a better idea. Alright, we got a roving threat down there. I'm going to stay over here. Where are we? Yeah, we're approaching the swamp. Excellent. Wraith Cowl. Wraith Cowl should be 2 to 3 vials of Violet extract. Let's go double check. There we go. That was 2. I'm really just trying to find a safe-ish place where we can set up camp to do a little plugin development. How about on top of that Mornweed, which will have Golden extract, 2 to 3. 2. Well, couldn't have been worse, but that's okay. Couldn't have been much better either. Okay, so we're going to set ourselves up here, overlooking that swamp in the distance, and take a look at things. Now, I do have Titan Bar up just to give me an overview of how many of each of the files we have. Titan Bar has that as of the last release, I think. It's available to everyone. For a little while there, it was just on my machine. But it has been part of the official release, I believe. Okay, so let's go ahead and dismount here in case something does attack us. let's go look at code. So, actually, wouldn't it be nice if I had positioned myself next to an herb so I could play around with that? All right, let's go not pick up the next herb I see. There we go. My apologies, Nomenbor. I need your spot. Thank you for your service. Okay, so we have a Mornweed here. We know it's going to be 2 to 3 vials of golden extract. We have a Bone Mallow. We know it's going to be 3 to 5 vials of violet extract. And those are the two wastes versions of the extracts, as opposed to Crimson Umber or Verdant, which are the North Ithilien focused ones. Now there are some plants in the waste that will drop some of these, what I think of as lower level ones, but they just have different purposes. But I don't think you can get golden or violet up in North Ithilien. I think you have to be in the wastes. Cool. Okay, let's take a look. So, ideally, I was clever and opened up our source code here. And we also have our source control. So we can take a look and see, do we have a clean working directory? And the answer is not yet. We have some to-do notes to ourselves for the target window. Okay. This is uncommitted, but that's what we're going to be working on today. But we also have a couple other things. We had some testing code. When the plugin loads, we spit out some stuff. I don't think that's a problem. We had all of that right here. I think it's fine for right now. I don't think it's very useful at the moment. I think we've moved beyond it. So what we want to do is we want to go to line 56, and we're just going to go ahead and comment that out. We won't delete it yet. Maybe I'll be incorrect and we'll want it. It's easier to just comment it out for now, and then because it's uncommitted, we can just throw it away later. Now in Flora, I found line 408. I found Eye of Night gave me more than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be 2 to 3, and that's going to be 3 to 4 if you have a toolkit. Turns out, I opened one up and I got 4, which turned into 5. Therefore, the range must be higher. It's not very common. Usually it's been 2 or 3 as the base number. But I did see a 4 turned 5, so I know it must be possible. And that's going to be something I'm going to be doing is the more of these values I confirm visually, I say, oh, it should be between here, it was, cool. The more I know what these numbers should be, and then I can go back to the wiki and update those, because I got these originally from the wiki, and I've just been adjusting them based on the numbers that I see. Cool. So, adjusted Eye of Night max value based on observed loot. So we'll just go ahead and commit that. And then we have as clean of a working directory as we're going to have during this development process, which is to say the only changes we haven't saved are comments or test code. Okay, so I think there's 2 ways I want to present this information, and once I see it in action, I might feel really strongly about one of them or the other. So the first is to only show the files that are related, and their number ranges, and if it's a variable output, or I guess actually a fixed output, like you're always going to get 4 things, that display that information somewhere. I'm not sure. The other display is always show all 5 of the possible files, but then just gray things out unless they're actually coming. So I'm not sure which of those I'll prefer more, or how easy it is to be graying these things out, but that's sort of my starting goal. So we're going to go ahead and draw the 5 files. And as we're thinking about this, it might make more sense to make a class that is a combination of a file and the text on it saying how many things. But because we only have 5 of these things, it's not going to save us a bunch of effort to just not bother doing that right now and come back later and clean it up if it makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. So instead, what we want to do is remind ourselves where those IDs are. Now I know that I found them in Tighten bar. So let's pull that up. Okay, so file icons. We're just going to pull some of those in. So that is going to be crimson. Awesome. The next is umber. Okay. Verdant. Golden. And violet. We're not going to bother displaying the other two because my understanding is these can exist in any of the other flowers. They just are very rare. So there's no point in pointing out that it will be between 0 and 1 amber and 0 and 1 sapphire on literally every flower when the vast majority of time it's 0. That doesn't feel like helpful information. Because they can be on any of them, I think, and actually I think it's actually amber might be biased towards the plants with the 3 in that are more commonly found in North Ithilien, and sapphire is more commonly found in the wastes, maybe. But I think I was finding some of each before then, although they might have been in the baskets. Anyway, so that's sort of my instinct is there's a tendency to find amber more in North Ithilien herbs and sapphire more in the waste herbs. But it's not helpful. Like if the information never changes for any of the things that you're clicking on, it doesn't feel like useful information. What I want to know is what are my variables here. So we're not going to bother with the amber and the sapphire trying to display that. So it's just the 5 files. And I think I would like to have a little bit of space between the base 3 and the next 2. Just a moment. Okay, I think a cat's getting into trouble upstairs. No worries. If a cat's not, crying violently, then it's probably fine. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create the 5 files here. We're going to just start by displaying the images, and then we'll come back and do text. Okay, so I think I want to try to do things iteratively instead of just copy pasting the code. So we're going to go ahead and say hang on a sec. I feel like I'm duplicating things. Crimson, there we go. We're going to go ahead and pull this off and use it as a reference. All right, file crimson equals, and actually, we already have a lookup for these things. I feel like we should go ahead and save off these icons. Herb icons equals, and we're going to go ahead and file crimson equals, and we'll go ahead and do the hex codes here. And it's going to look a lot like that. 2, 3, 4, 5. Crimson, umber, verdant, golden, and violet. And we'll just copy in their values as well. Great, so we don't need that anymore. So what we want to do is local file file icons that's fine. Turbine equals, we're going to make a table of this, and in this table it is we're going to go ahead and iterate through the things that we care about. So for file equals file crimson to file violet do, and one thing that you have to be careful of when you're doing for loops in a language that or iterations in a language that you're not 100% confident in is this going to include that top number or not? Is this an inclusive or exclusive range? Pretty much all the ones I'm familiar with, if you say we're going to start at this value, that is inclusive on the lower range. We will definitely hit file crimson. And usually it is exclusive on the top range. We're going, in this, the way this is written would go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then stop when we hit 5. But I want to double check myself. Could do a web search as well, but it's fine. We're going to just do it in the actual plugin instead. So we're going to come on in here. Plugins, unload, Herbalism Helper. Really? There we go. Hang on. I should actually spell that correctly. When in doubt, copy paste. Okay. Great. We're getting unexpected symbol. So let's go ahead and find this. Target window line 50. Oh, great. That was incomplete line. No wonder. That's not going to work. Okay, so we're back. So we can actually see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is inclusive of the top range. This is why we test these things, because my instinct is that this is written as if for, so this is the C# version, right? Var I equals 0, I is less than 10, plus I, right? And this says we're going to start at 0, and we're going to keep on increasing 0 until, until I is not less than 10, which means you're not going to hit 10. And a way to, yeah, so this is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Cool. That's 10 numbers. And if you're doing 0 indexing, that's the first 10 things. Awesome. And one thing that you can do, I equals 0, I is less than or equal to 10, plus I. But that is something what people do, but it doesn't feel as intuitive for a 0 indexed language. So I'd recommend against it. However, if your language is 1 based, and you're trying to do the first 10 things, then you need it to look like that. And I think that's why Lua probably is doing that, because if you're trying to do the first 5 things, Violet is 5 here, then you need that to be inclusive. I'm guessing that's the design choice, but I would have to look it up to be convinced that other people think that as well. Okay, but this is convenient from a writing perspective, which means we can say for crimson to violet, we're going to create a thing. So file icons, file equals turbine.ui.control. We can start by just making this the icon, and then later we can make this the combination of the icon and the text if we want to, or we could just have 2 parallel tables, whatever makes our life easier. And we're going to go ahead and say file icons, file. In fact, if we want to have a little bit easier time of writing this, instead of doing that, we can go ahead and say local icon equals this, and then file icons equals icon. And then we can go ahead and say icon set size. It's probably 32 by 32. Icon set background. And we're going to go ahead and say that is herb icons of file. And we need to set its position. So icon set left to be file -1 times 32. just as a starting point, and that should just tile them from left to right. Oh, but the most important thing is with the control is you've got to parent it, otherwise it's not going to show up on the screen. So icon set parent, we want that to be the file's control in which this is being drawn. And that's really probably enough for our purposes. In fact, we don't want that to be local files icon, do we? Probably not. Self.files icon. We're going to do that instead, because we do want to access that later. In fact, same thing with the files control here is, hang on, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to say self.files control equals, actually, do we need that files control later? I'm not convinced we'll do, but we'll come back if we do. Self.file icons equals, and we'll go ahead and use that local value. That's just because this is slightly more to write than this. This feels a bit cleaner. We're just dealing with this local thing here, no outside scope, but we will save it off. Okay, so let's go ahead and make sure we didn't have another typo. Awesome, no. And hey, we've got things here. So that is the 5 of them. Just glancing at Titan bar above, we can see that they are in the correct order. We do see that we have some extra space to work with though, but just off the bat, that's looking really good. Now, I am curious about a grayscale option. So what I want to do is look at the opacity option for a control and see if that doesn't address some of our needs. And so to do that, I'm going to refresh my memory by bringing up the API documentation and come into turbine.ui.control, that's color, and look at the opacity options. Set opacity. All right, so that's the opacity of the window. Funny thing to say on control, but conflating terms here. This is a number between 0 and 1. 0 is fully transparent and 1 is fully opaque. Windows will make use of opacity to determine. It's only valid for certain controls. Let's see if it's valid for these. So we're going to go ahead and say icon set opacity. And you know what? We can actually just say file divided by 5 to give us a number. And that'll be yeah, let's try that. Boop. Okay, that did not work. And I suppose that's not too surprising. If we had wanted that, we could have said window. Sorry, if we'd wanted to try that. And Windows, UI windows, I think are by default not visible. Let's see if that is true. Okay, so yes, if we wanted to do opacity, and the opacity is an interesting way to show that no, it's not available. But I think the problem is until you get to super duper opaque, it's not at all obvious that it is becoming opaque. And something I like to consider is grayscale. But grayscale files are going to look identical to each other, probably. I mean, I'd be surprised if there was any practical difference between the 5 of those when rendered as grayscale, given that the color is the only meaningful difference. Maybe a slight difference, like you might be able to pick out, oh, that pixel's different. But practically speaking, I don't think so. Thank you, Tom. So we could do opacity. If we're willing to do windows instead of controls, we can do opacity and just set it down to something really low, like this is 20%, 40, 60, 80, 100. 80 is barely noticeable. Even 60 is not very. So I think we're talking 40% or less. Could do something like 25% opaque. And that would be a starting point. So opacity needs to be 25% or less to be obviously disabled. Be obviously opaque. 60% or higher. Okay, just making a note here. So we can next work on positioning these things. Do we want to position them? We should get a text box for each one of these as well first. Okay, so a problem with doing... Is it a problem? Sorry, I'm trying to contemplate what the text is going to look like. And it would be useful if we could find one of the composite herbs as well. Which ones are there? Flora, yes. Okay, so a larkspur. If we can find a larkspur, that would be convenient, because that's going to be one of the more complicated ones. And I've seen larkspur over here in the swamp, so we're gonna take a look for that. You know what, I am kind of tempted to implement that opacity code sooner rather than later so that we can make use of it here. So instead, what we want to do is we're going to not set the opacity here. In the update window, great. Great, we have that. Show loot herb. Okay. So the herb is going to be an entry in here. So what we're looking for is the yields. Okay, so clear the current display. For file equals, and this was the same idea as this actually. So we're going to go ahead and do and we're going to go ahead and say self.file icons file set opacity what? Set opacity of, and you know what, I feel like I'm going to regret not doing something. Let's go ahead and say self dot full opacity equals 1.0 self dot unused opacity equals 0.25. And that way we'll have a single centralized place. We could even configure that in the options window once we have one. But then we don't have to remember what we're doing. Okay, so for each of the file icons, set the opacity to the unused. Then for key value in iPairs herb.yields do So we're going to iterate through each of the numerical values, 1, 2, 3, until we hit a gap, an index that's not there. And then we're going to say self.fileIcons, and this is going to be value.file. What's the problem? Set opacity. Sure. And this is going to be self.opacity full opacity. Why would I do that to myself? Used opacity and used opacity. Used and unused, pair up your names if they're going to go together. Don't just do the first word that comes to your head without coming back and editing. So yeah, we have used opacity, we have unused. If we wanted to have them like start with the word opacity, it would be opacity used, opacity unused. I could go either way. With modern systems, if I just start typing opacity, 8's going to come up with set used and unused. And I think that's good enough. I could be convinced otherwise, though. Okay, so we're going to set the opacity based off of those things. I think that's actually it. Let's pop this in and see what that looks like. Okay, there's an error. Love it. Let's figure out what's going on here. 75. Okay, attempt to index local herb a number value. Oh, whoops. We're getting that thing. All right, so we need to be in Herbalism Flora. So sure, Herbalism Flora herb yields. Let's try that. There we go. Ooh, those are 2 wraith scowls. That's not very helpful game. I'll take one of you. Okay. But still, that's a wraith scowl back there. Evan Gleam. Ooh, I am liking how that looks. Not a fan of the spacing, mind you, but just the fact that it works, that's pretty cool. I like that. Okay, a horsetail is one of the 3 on the left, so it's a lower priority for me because I've got 1,300 of these things. One of these does, I'll actually maybe buy the earrings that correspond to that. I think it's the earrings. All right, Wraith's Cowl. That's a violet. At least it's one of the ones I need for the journals. Dusk Nettle, so much violet. This is why I always have more violet than the golden, and I've been focusing on golden. All right. Raven Gleam. I'm really liking that transparency. Okay, I was a little worried that it just wouldn't look distinct, but because all 5 of them are there, and you always have at least one of them that is visible, I think that's going to work pretty well for my purposes. Obviously, a little bit more space. Actually, you know what? We can do that right now. So, we're spacing things out. So first of all, we want to have a margin. Plus file -1. You know what? No, we're going to do it here. Plus, we're going to go ahead and, I don't know, give 5 pixels in between. Is that too much? Might be too much. It's okay. That's not bad. But we know that we want there to be space between the common and the uncommons. So local left equals file -1 times 32 plus, and let's go ahead and name some stuff. So local icon width equals 32, local icon margin left margin equals 5. So we can go ahead and swap those in. Okay. So we fixed some of that, but the file -1 thing is fine. Local file 0 indexed equals file -1. That's fine. So we at least have names for all these things. And then if file is something something greater than verdant, then left equals left plus another something 25. I don't know. We're gonna play around with it until it looks good, or it'll just look good on the first try, and that'll be perfect. So, what's up, Fly? So, where are we? Not where we need to be. Still looking for that larkspur, but maybe I need to be closer to this water. Okay, the mornweed. Oh, I like that spacing. Don't like the presence of that frog, toad. I think that's actually coming together pretty nicely. Wraith's Cowl, it's going to be 2 to 3. I'm thinking we could maybe implement the below text really quickly and get something much closer to functional here. I don't think there's a roving threat near here, but just in case, I'm going to go stand by the rock wall that is separating us from North Ithilien. Where are we? Up there somewhere. Okay. Cool. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and... Why do I position myself without an herb to click on? I just love picking up the herbs, but it's going to get me into trouble. Avank, I need your spot. Oh, it's a larkspur. Awesome. So there's this one. Oh, yeah, that looks good. Oh, there's 2 larkspurs. Oh, good stuff. Okay, so larkspur, we have 2 more pieces of information we need to show. The distribution per file, and then the total expected extracts as well. So for larkspur, we can see we're going to get, without a Fateful Toolkit, let's start with that. Without a Fateful Toolkit, we're going to get 0 to 5 of Crimson, Umbar, and Verdant, but it's going to be, for what we've observed, a total of 4 to 5 of these things. And then if you equip the Fateful Toolkit, it's going to be pretty similar, but the numbers go up. So the minimum stays at 0. You might not get a category, but if you do, that category is going to be 1 higher. So the 5 increases to 6, and then the total numbers also have to shift, because you get that minimum bump of 1 if all of your extracts are in a single category, but your extracts can be in all 3 categories. We've seen that as well, which means you're going to get an extra 1 in each of those, so the max goes up by 3. So the range broadens because of that Fateful Toolkit. It also suggests that having a Fateful Toolkit is just super useful if you're doing the herbalisms, like really pursuing the herbalisms, because this herb went from getting 4 to 5 to 5 to 8, which is almost a doubling for these compound herbs. Fantastic. It's not game breaking, but certainly a nice quality of life change. So if you do have the resources to get a Fateful Toolkit, yeah, you're definitely going to appreciate it when it comes to this sort of game mechanic. Now, Fateful Toolkit, I think, caps out somewhere. Yep, up through Gundabad. So we get past Gundabad, and I'm going to be a sad camper, unless they've introduced a higher level version of that. Okay, so let's just get some text fields in here so we can play around with this. I want to start out by keeping them separate. So this is going to be local file text equals. And we'll do the same thing. We'll go ahead and pluralize that. Self.file texts equals file texts. And then we're going to go ahead and local text equals turbine.ui dot. And what are we looking for here? In the UI namespace, we have a text box, and then there is a label as well. What's in the branded? I don't think we want a branded element here. So what's the difference between a label and a text box? Text box is for iterating. We just want a label, of course. Control for inputting text, that's not right. A label for displaying text, perfect. So this is a turbine.ui.label. And we're going to go ahead and remember to parent it, text set parent. And this is going to be the file's control as well. And I think the default value for these is going to be hidden. So text set visible false. And that's how we're going to reset it when we clear the current display. Self.file text. Wow, did I mess that one up? Texts. File set visible to false. And then for, gotta use the same opening and close. And then for these, it'll be self.file texts file set visible to true. And then we're going to self.file texts value.file. You know what? We're just going to say local file equals value.file. Oh, just make this read a little bit nicer. Really? I think not. What am I standing in? I don't know. It doesn't look healthy. Cannot enter stealth. That is hilarious. But seeing as I'm not a burglar, I don't think I care. Okay. So file. We're going to set text. And for setting text, I just want it to be something. So it's actually just going to be file. Okay. The rest of this, we need to do a little bit more. So we need to be text set size, set width. And for setting width, let's start with being the same width as the icon. And text set left, let's be the same left. But actually for position, set position, we want it to be underneath the icons, I think. So that's the left, and then the top, we want it to be lower. Let's go ahead and let's hoist those out for a minute. You know what? That's there. Okay. So let's go ahead and local icon height equals 32 as well. Just be consistent there. So we have an icon width. We have an icon height. We have a cat crying in the background because it wants fish. Icon height. Let's start there. Let's actually give it a couple extra pixels, like 5 pixels, and see what that looks like. And it'll, let's see, local text top margin equals 5. Let's go ahead and name that as well. Okay. And again, it starts unvisible, so we don't care that it's empty of text. We want it to be empty of text. It'll be invisible unless we're showing it, and if so, you know what? We might be able to just go ahead and show something useful. No, I'm not ready for that. Okay, so did everything get saved? Yes. Okay, we have an error. Attempting to index a field. Radio. Yep, we did in fact forget to add it to the array. Table, really. File texts. File equals text. Really? Right. So, unload that plugin, reload that plugin, great. And we can see 1, 2, 3, awesome. What we're not seeing is a centering of the text underneath. That's okay, that's just a starting point. But we are seeing it being correctly populated with the code as it is. I think those are the only 3 plants we have available to us right now. That's fine. Okay, so what we would like to do is get the text that's going into this output. And for that, it might be useful to know, where is that? Who is that? What is that? Handle target changed. Let's go take a look at that. All right, so we get the target. If there is a target, we try to get the herb. It might be nil. We pass that on here. We pass the possibly nil herb onto the target window, and then we go ahead and generate this as well. This logic is something we would like to, I don't know if duplicate is the right word. Okay, so we're line 87. But this is what's up. That's funny. This is only for console output. No need to localize. Okay, so we have a count. And so what we need to adjust here is the mins and max based off of the isFaithful toolkit. Okay, so isFaithful toolkit is coming from here. So we can duplicate some of this logic, I think. So we have a flora. Flora.yields. Is that the same as herb here? It is not, but we can get there. Okay. Okay, so for the count here, we're not doing the min-max yet. Oh, this is for a yield. Okay, we are doing that. So we would like, let's go ahead and grab the isFaithful toolkit equipped property or value. Galeriel says, I'm going back to Herbalism to get some stuff for my house, and the vial tracking is really helping. Yeah, the vials in Titan Bar was a pet project of mine because I was having that problem where I was like, okay, how many of what do I have? So I would go to, essence, vial, file. I was going to file and be like, okay, but do I care about all these? Which ones do I care about? These are in alphabetical order, which is great, except for it's terrible. I really want to cluster them for, common versus uncommon versus rare. And Titan Bar just gives me that flexibility where if I only care about the uncommon ones, I can just not even bother with the other ones. Really. Go away. Okay. So yes, definitely, and I'm glad that what's his name was able to package that together and push out a release. Yeah, Claire says, yeah, it's great to pick and choose. Absolutely. Okay, so so we kind of just want this logic. So let's play around with that. generate the count for the file. Let's start with this. We have the count. The count, what is value? Value here is in the yields, so that's actually fine. So value.min equals value.max, then count equals count. What's up with that? Defined as a string. Can I convert that to integer? Sure. Okay. And then in here, blah, blah, blah. Awesome. What is it with the wildlife here? And then we'll set the text to count. All right, let's see what happens. Ooh. It's all my hopes and dreams in one. Now, text centering. We would like to center the text. Let's see if the API suggests that is possible. That's probably going to be called an alignment, so we want to be able to set the text alignment. So let's do that. Actually, let's pause on that for a minute. Let's set the background color of the text so we can see how wide is this thing, what's going on. So this is just testing code, and this is text set back color, and that's going to be a turbine.ui.color.something interesting. What do we have? Fire break. Fantastic. And then we can also come back and do the alignment next. So, Roderick says, hi everyone, hello. Okay, so we can see the labels are much taller than I was expecting them to be. Not a big deal. And they are as wide as the icons. Perfect. So let's go ahead and center that text. And so we're going to do text set text alignment, and that's going to take a alignment value. And so there's a content alignment field here. So that's going to be a turbine.ui.contentalignment.something. And this is going to be a top center is where we want this. Let's see if that actually works. Okay. Actually, I undid the coloration. And now I'm sad that I did that because I want to see it. So, yeah, okay, that's fine. It looks a little weird because of the slanted, biased iconography of the file. Without that background color, it actually doesn't look as centered as I thought it would. And we can fix that by making the field a little bit wider or a little bit different, but it's fine. Let's go ahead and turn off that background color and see if we get used to it or if we think it needs to change. Another one. Okay, so it's probably fine. Probably fine. I think I'll get used to it. Okay. Oh my goodness, though, that has the information I want it to have. It's great. The one thing we don't have yet is that summary of how many total should we expect for things like the larkspur that are what I'm calling a composite herb. And for that, I've saved some space here on the right. Really for all of them, I suppose, but it really matters for the composites. So expected min-max, let's go ahead and hoist that out as well. And we're going to generate the expected min-max if present. So we're going to go ahead and start that logic here. And this is also in the iteration through flora yields. And we only care about this. What is this? If text equals that. Where does text get set? Oh, this is multiple loops through. Hey, all right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hoist out. I don't think I need yield here. I don't think. So this is actually going to be count, I think. Is it? All right, if count is greater than 1, we don't need text at all, I think. But yeah, I think, where are we getting yields from? Let's hoist that out, actually. Local flora equals this. Wait. It'll be flora.yields, that's fine. We have flora for down here. And really, it's if this is greater than 1, I think. So we don't actually need count. Great. No. Also, I was conflating two counts. That was going to be terrible. So, if this is greater than 1, then okay, I don't think that needs to be in this loop after all, and that makes sense to me now. So generate this, great. Expected min-max is nil. If this is greater than 1, then the min and max equals that. If the Fateful Toolkit is equipped, we're going to adjust those based on the values. If they're the same, we're going to set the value of this. And otherwise, we're going to set it to that. And then we need to set a text field. We don't have a text field for this. So we're going to come on in and make our final text field. And that's going to be not in a loop. We just need a single one of these. And that's going to be local text equals, can I do a local text here? Maybe. Turbine.ui.label. And that's expected text. Max text equals that. Remember, the first thing you want to do is parent it, so set parent to files control in this case. And then we want to set that to also not be visible. Set visible false. We want it to be set with, I don't know. Let's try an experiment and set the icon width, and also we're going to go ahead and set the back color. Let's do turbine.ui.control.color to something. lavender. No, that's not dark enough. It might be. Let's give it a try. It looks really light. Sure. Medium violet red. Okay. And we'll set that apart. What else do we need to do? We need to set a position, set position. And we're not sure what that's going to be yet. And we do want to set that text alignment, probably. It doesn't need to be aligned for much. Okay, so the position is going to be the big thing. So we know approximately where everything else is. And really we want it to be over here somewhere. So to the right of those files there, and probably vertically centered. Or just on the same line as the other text. Yeah, probably on the same line as the other text. I could see that. So we want it to be question mark, comma, and that'll be icon height plus text top margin again. So that'll be the same. So the real question is, how far over do we go? And we can just say self.files icons, and this is going to be the last one. So we know that is violet. Get left plus icon width plus something else. And we're going to just start off by saying plus 0 because I just want to see it on the screen. And then we can go ahead and assign this. We're going to self.expected min-max text equals expected. And again, we could just start off by using this the whole time. I just find it feels more cumbersome because you're retyping that self dot a whole lot. So 6 of one, half a dozen other though, and under the covers it's basically the same thing. One could argue that there's slightly more memory cleanup that needs to be done because it needs to allocate a variable, and then it's going to assign a reference to that variable, and then this local thing that is a reference to another thing, maybe it needs to be cleaned up. And in a stack-based language, you just expect that local variable to be popped off the stack, and then you still have that memory space that's being referenced by this other thing. I don't know how Lua implements that kind of thing, though, but it's hard to avoid a stack. They're everywhere. Okay, so we have that, and so let's go ahead and, self.expected set text expected min-max. We also want to make sure it's visible. If expected min-max, then self.expected min-max is set visible true. Otherwise, we want to go ahead and set expected min-max set visible to false. And if we didn't have the set text in here, then we would definitely want to be combining that into a single statement to connect expected min-max. It would look something like, something more like self.expected min-max set visible equal to expected min-max does not equal nil, right? So if it's not nil, it's visible. It's nil, it's not visible. That kind of thing. But since we're already in a conditional, we're already in a conditional because of this. I don't think that's any cleaner to jump out of the conditional and then do a conditional in that set visible. It doesn't really feel like it buys us very much. This is just like, here's when it's true, here's when it's false, and that makes sense here, I think. Okay, let's go ahead and see if it works. Oh, that is bonkers, and also not big enough. But it is showing and hiding correctly. We definitely want to make it bigger. So let's start with that. I would say we can decouple the widths of these things. So local expected width equals, and we'll just go 64, just double it up. Marking it out. Okay, so icon width, we're going to expected width, and expected just has a lot of versatility. I'm going to go ahead and not use that up. Okay, expected min-max width. And then, let's see that in play. It's still not wide enough for the total. All right, let's go wider. Let's go 100. Really? Okay, so we'll load that up. Okay, that's definitely wide enough, and we don't expect any text that's wider than that, so that's fine. And then the location. How do we feel about the location? It's actually not bad, I think. Let's go ahead and get rid of the background test color. Adrark says, what sort of plugins do you usually specialize in? The number one type is something that's on my mind because of where I am in the game or what activities I'm doing in the game that have a little thing in there that make me think, oh, this would be slightly easier. Like I could definitely save 5 minutes of my time here if I spent 5 hours writing a plugin, which isn't necessarily an efficient thing, but it saves not only my time, but like 7 other people's times, and also I find it fun and interesting. Like, it's enjoyment in and of itself. Like, I'm not doing this as a job. Like, this is just a different aspect of the game for me, so it's not about efficiency. But I'm spending a lot of time here in North Ithilien in the Wastes over on Treebeard, because that was end game content until just recently, like in the last month or so. We went up to having access to Mordor. But I still have so much herbalism stuff to do and Host of the West stuff to do here. And so I'm spending a lot of time here, and I'm hitting like little irritating parts of the game interface where I would like to know X. Specifically, I wanted to look at an herb and know if it was going to be helpful or not. Like, I'm looking for golden elixir. Is this herb going to be helpful? No. And now I have a definitive display of how unhelpful it's going to be. Larkspur, it's actually great. Like, look at it. It's going to give me so many things potentially. Let's actually try it out now. In fact, I'm going to go do this other Larkspur. It's farther away. So we know we're going to get 0 to 6, 0 to 6, 0 to 6 of these 3 things. Let's see what we get. All right, it was 2 and 4. And we knew we were going to get 5 to 8 total. We got 6 things. Perfect. Right on the money. Whereas if I come over here and look at this Wraith's Cowl, oh look, the Wraith's Cowl will give me a Violet, which is at least useful for buying those journals that I need for Host of the West sub-factions. It's not golden, but that's okay, and I know I'm going to get 2 to 3 of them. And again, that's being adjusted because I have my Fateful Toolkit on. If I look at it now, we can see it's 1 to 2. If I come on over here, I can see 0 to 5, 4 to 5 total. Perfect. So that's sort of the big thing. Like, when I was really, after coming off of Bombadil, where it was so deed completion focused, I got the bee in my bonnet to go write the deed tracker plugin because I was like, never again am I doing this with spreadsheets. I will have a plugin that knows when I complete a deed and checks it off of a list for me. And so that was Deed Tracker, right? Or I primarily played Minstrels, and so I was very interested in the Minstrel Buff plugin, but it just didn't do as much as I wanted it to do. So Minstrel Buff 2, with all the stuff that I wanted to add in. So that's really where my focus is it's aligned with what I'm doing when I'm playing the game. So I play the game, maybe rebuilding Hidbolt, I'm like, oh man, this thing would be much easier if I did X, Y, or Z. And so plugin ideas happen. And sometimes the plugins come to fruition, sometimes not. The Hidbolt dress-up plugin still sits on my computer, but I haven't published it out because it's not really done. And my attention has moved elsewhere. So until the next time I'm doing Hidbolt, it's going to kind of linger because there's so many other things to be looking at. Roderick says, my top favorite is LOTRO Companion. I'm a completionist, so I export to Excel and keep track of my progress per map. Yeah, LOTRO Companion is fantastic for grabbing information about your character. Love it. And I built an import from LOTRO Companion, really, so that you can import your deed completion into Deed Tracker precisely because it has access to all that information, and the LOTRO API that plugins work with they don't give access to deed completion information or quest completion or what have you. So if you start using Deed Tracker midway through your character's journey, you don't want to have to go click off all the deeds that you've completed. So we just go grab that information from LOTRO Companion. So yeah, definitely a big fan of that. Okay, so what do we have here? We are showing the expected drops of noticing that we have a to-do item here. Hang on a second. Let me go over to GitHub. I'm going to just sign in on the other screen here. And we're going to Herbalism Helper. Great. And we're going to go over to the issues, because I just spotted an issue that I want to address. New issue. Handle toolkit being equipped while, yeah, I thought so. While window is being displayed. The numbers aren't adjusted. You have to click off and back on to see the correct numbers. Okay, it's me. We're going to create a little issue to track that. Project says, oh, I used it yesterday. I loved it. As a plugin creator, do you feel that SSG has made your life easier in the sense that if they made any changes recently? So the LOTRO API, the programming interface that plugins use to talk to the game, to get information about the game, is more constrained than you might find in a game like World of Warcraft. And that puts unique challenges on a plugin developer. There are some things that plugin authors would very much like to do if the API supported it. And a classic example is when SSG came out with the carryalls, which are a little bit of a quality of life thing. I have a bunch of them. This was brought up before. I have perhaps too many of them, but I have a large number of them here on Treebeard. They're lovely, but they are opaque to a plugin because there's no interface that says, hey, what's in this thing? So plugins can know that something went into a carryall, but they can't necessarily know which one. And plugins can know that something came out of a carryall. If you craft something, we can see, oh, that was removed from a carryall, but again, not which one. But if you go and manually remove something from a carryall, that is hidden from plugins. There's no chat message, there's no game state change that tells us that that came from a carryall. And so there's stuff that plugins would like to do with carryalls and their contents that currently we can't do because that's missing. And I think that's in line with the capabilities of plugins within the LOTRO ecosystem, so that would be a welcome change. But there's a discussion to be had over the more powerful plugins are, the more mandatory they start feeling for the community. And Faulting Ideas had a lovely video on this year or two back, and it's titled "Why It's Rude to Suck at Warcraft," but it really talks about, because plugins are so powerful within the World of Warcraft ecosystem, it means that the people who really are attempting to conquer the game, the dungeons, the raids, are going all out on plugin development, or add-ins as they call them over there. And so it means that the people who are making the dungeons, the employees at Blizzard, have to take that into account. They know, okay, they are definitely going to be using plugins to aid them in conquering this dungeon, so we should design to make it challenging for them even though they have this plugin. That means if you're not using these plugins or add-ins, that you're going to have perhaps a significantly harder time, and it's going to nudge you in the direction of using these things. And there's a valid discussion to be had of, is that good for the community? Is that good for all of us? So I'm not sad that the sandbox here is much more constrained, but there are some sore points where it would be nice if it was adapted to take into account some of the more recent changes in the game. Interesting. Hot in chat says they just did announce add-ons like that are not going to be welcome going forward in World of Warcraft. Fascinating. I am not in the World of Warcraft ecosystem. It's been, I don't know, almost 20 years since last time I played, probably. But I thought it was a very interesting discussion, and it definitely put new ideas in my head. So if you haven't seen it, Folding Ideas is a full of interesting information about all sorts of things, from World of Warcraft to financial scandals. And what are you doing, Marsh Lurker? Not welcome. So, if you have a spare hour or 20, go check that out. But that's the specific video where it definitely gave me some ideas of the constraints that we have in add-ons, in plugins, are understandable both from you don't want it to get too necessary for people to play the game, but also, there are some things that you can do as a plugin author now that are technically possible but challenging, like the deed tracker plugin. There's no API for you completed a deed. Plugins can know this, but it was still possible to make something that was mostly able to track that, and that was an interesting challenge. So it would have been a simpler thing to write if the API supported more deed-oriented stuff, but maybe it would have been less challenging and less interesting for me to do it. Hot says, it was last week they said they're putting their own version of the add-ons used in-game. I want to create more stable in-game flow. It's probably too late. The community is very against it because that's what they're used to. Yeah, that was one of the things that came up in that Folding Ideas video was at some point they wanted to constrain, I think, the field of view. So instead of being able to like zoom out away from your character, that it was situated more like this. And there was mass annoyance / anger / panic in community. There was people like, nah! Breaks my workflow. So that is something we don't have to worry about so much in the plugin development community for Lord of the Rings Online, because the SSG developers tend to be very cautious with making any changes to the plugin system as it sits. So when they add new classes or new races, they'll update the enumeration of those values so that plugins can make use of that. But other than that, there haven't been any, I guess I would say, meaningful changes in quite a while. And some would be welcome little quality of life tweaks, like carry-all contents. Some of them could be, I don't know about game breaking, but could open up plugins to a very wider world. Something as simple as a plugin being able to say, where is the character right now? Which you can, as a player, you can trigger by doing /LOC. And if you do that, you're going to get a little output that says you are on such and such server, which server number, blah, 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 all of this information. And that is enough to identify where you are in the game world, X, Y, Z, and also when is it. And if you press /LOC, a plugin can make use of that, can put you on a map, can do interesting things. But if a plugin could just ask that question and get an answer, then all of a sudden you could have plugins, and World of Warcraft has had these, I assume they still exist, where, oh, you just looted a thing, let me just plot your current location on a map of, hey, there's Wraithscowl right here. Oh, you just looted a Larkspur? Let me just plot that on a map and says, okay, there's a Larkspur right here. And yeah, it would, for such a small thing, you can get a lot of effect out of it. And, it doesn't change things too much to make the player have to be like, hey, where are you button? And a plugin could do that. It could say, oh, you just looted a thing, pop up a little thing and says, click me. And then if you do that, then the plugin knows where you are. But it's that extra step that means you don't see too many plugins doing that. It's not as integrated an experience. It's not as turnkey. You're just going to come over and attack me, aren't you? Okay. Ithilien says it's understandable SSG doesn't want an automated player. Absolutely. There was an add-on on World of Warcraft back, many a generation ago. I remember that would, I think, automatically connect you via multiple swift travel things. Like, oh, I am in the dwarf place and I want to go to the far north, and I'll have the plugin or the add-on take me there. I don't know if I'm misremembering things or if that was a thing that people wanted but couldn't. But yeah, that idea of chaining multiple swift travels via an add-on, that's very powerful. It's perhaps more powerful than the developers want. And yeah, as Blizzard may be learning right now, if you give people this expansive ability and they use it and they develop things and people get used to that as part of their workflow, and then you try to take that away, it's possibly a worse player experience than having never given it to them at all. So yeah, another reason why I don't blame SSG for being cautious about doing API updates. But I would like to see we already have access to inventory. It'd be nice to see the inside of carryalls, right? We already have access to this thing. It'd be nice if it just worked a little bit more consistently, like target effects, the effects of people in your fellowship or your raid. These things that we already have access to, but there are known issues or bugs or things that you need workarounds for, like mini raid. The mini raid seems a little weird when you're adding and removing people from your raid, and that's because it's reloading itself every time someone is added, because otherwise, if it doesn't, it sees inconsistent data for your raid members. And that's the workaround, is it's just like, oh, someone was added, I'm just going to reboot myself. And that fixes the problem, but it'd be nice if we didn't have to do that. Roderick says, out of curiosity, how do plugins work? So plugins for Lord of the Rings Online and several other games are written in a language called Lua. And that's what we're seeing in the background here. And how it works is it's like a little miniature program that Lord of the Rings Online attempts to run. And so you say, I would like you to run the program Herbalism Helper or Titan Bar. And LOTRO tries to do that. It tries to execute this code, and the code gives it instructions of, here's how I want to interact with the player. I want to draw a window here. I want there to be a button, and when the user presses that button, I want you to call this function over here. So it is very helpful if you're looking to program a plugin for a game to already know how to do programming with a computer, but I don't think it's mandatory. I think it's possible to pick up the basics just by looking, talking with other people. Of course, you don't have to do this alone, but looking at how does this other plugin work, and it can be a little basic plugin like this Herbalism Helper. This Herbalism Helper, whenever you target an herb, it tries to present information about it. And I feel like I'm eventually going to want to center all the... it's using the whole space, though. I think it's probably good. So this is like, if you're targeting an herb, we're going to show information. And if you're not targeting an herb, we don't. And if you're targeting something that's not an herb, we also don't. So this is a basic little plugin, and looking at how this does what it does can be informative of how the whole thing works. Ithilien says plugins are run on the client side with some query functions to get data from the server. I'm not sure that's true. I think plugins can only see client-side information. Ithilien, what are you thinking that would get information from the server? Because, for instance, plugins that look at your personal vault or your shared storage only get information about that if you, the player, get that information from the server. If you open up one of those things and we wait for that to query it from the server. So the plugin, in my mind, is querying the local version of that state. But I'm curious what you're thinking of for data from the server. But yeah, it's just a little program running on your computer inside your LOTRO, and it can only look, in my mind, it can only look at things that your LOTRO client has access to. So right now, I'm sitting right here in underneath my head in the wastes over on the left side here. So my LOTRO client doesn't know anything about the state of the world over by the teeth, over by Moran and the Blackgate. I mean, it knows that exists there, but I don't know anything about the creatures there, the mobs that are there. I don't know the state of the world over there. If there's a roving threat over there, my client does not know. And that's for several reasons. But I have to actually move over to this part of the world, and then the server will tell the client some information. And there's some exceptions like that. If a member of your fellowship is over there, then the server will also tell you that, because you get privileged information about where your fellowship members are. Okay, Ithilien says, okay, you're right. I was thinking of active skills, but you're right. No need to ask the server. Okay, cool. We're on the same page then. Just different ways of looking at it. So plugins, if the game if the servers gave the information to your client about where are all the roving threats in the world, then you could potentially have a game-breaking experience where you're just like, okay, here's where all the roving threats are today, bam! So you have to go out and find these things. And once you find them, you can use plugins to remember where you found them. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Ithilien says, I can see the fear for server attacks if the locate me function is not restricted to a specific amount of times per interval, like wait a little message you get when clicking too fast. Yeah, SSG is very good at throttling many things, and there's a few things where they don't throttle, which make me curious, because the thing, for instance, please don't abuse this, I'm not sure it can be abused, but if you have 100 things in your inventory that can be sold to a vendor, and you click the lock button, there is no throttling on that action, despite the fact that I suspect there is a round trip to the server travel for locking an item or unlocking an item. I don't have that many things in my inventory, but if I, jeepers, I just don't have that much stuff in my inventory that can be sold. You know, you have 100 things in your inventory. If you click that lock button, you can lock them all, and if you had the ability to hit that button 20 times a second, you're going to send 100 messages over the course of a second or two to say, lock all these items. And that feels like a round trip to the server thing. And then you can unlock them all. And these are not throttled, but so many other actions are throttled. And if you're a regular player of LOTRO, you've probably seen this, where if you try to pull things out of your shared storage too quickly, or put them in, or interact with the auction house too quickly, the server is like, well, slow down. You're looking a little too bot-like there. We want to make sure that you're a flesh and blood human who's maybe got some arthritis and can't move the mouse very fast. Because otherwise you're doing it too fast, and they err on the side of, we don't want people to to break the game by automating it. And you could definitely believe, but I think like the get timestamp function for plugins, where if you ask, hey, what time is it, over and over in the same callback, it's always the same response. Time does not advance from the perspective of the plugin while you're in a function. It can only be in a different callback where you can get a different timestamp. And I would imagine you would get something like that, where you can ask the local client, where am I, as many times as you want, but you're not going to get a different answer outside of a different, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. But also, I'm not sure there's a server interaction, or I'm not sure there needs to be. If you do a /LOC, there is no information here that should be servers only. Like, your client should know all this. Like, if you change which server you're connected to because you've zoned in and out, that could be delivered just once. You don't need to ask the server for it. The server just tells you, hey, you're on server 14 now. Your client knows that. Your actual position's XYZ. Your client has to know where it thinks you are. You don't have to ask the server for that. So I'm not personally convinced that this requires a round trip, though it may be implemented to use a round trip for that. I don't feel like it should do that. So that would be a thing is, why? Why ask the server where you are? The client knows where you think you are. I think it is true that there is some server interaction. Like, if you have lag, you don't get the response back necessarily quickly, and that indicates maybe there's some server delay. But yeah, there shouldn't be. This is clients, but this is all information that the client can know. Ithilien says, as I'm thinking about it, your location is displayed below the map. We can see my XY coordinates down here. So why not store it instead of the return value for get location? Yeah, there are all sorts of workarounds. I would love the granularity of this kind of information, especially because the coordinate system is just so Tolkien in how it reuses coordinates for different parts of the world. Like like a character having 7 different names, the same set of coordinates can refer to multiple different locations. And having the granularity of the full-on system here, I think that would be a welcome thing for plugins to have, except that it opens you up to all sorts of automatic data scraping that maybe SSG doesn't want you to have. But I could see that being implemented without having any extra server load. It just might not be straight out of the box implementation, because if you are being like, hey, what server am I, during the /LOC call, instead of the server just telling you whenever you change servers, here's your new server number, which feels like a thing it could already be doing. Anyway, off topic. Well, I don't know if we're off topic, but I'm going down a rabbit hole. Okay, so where are we? I had just noticed that there's a bug, but while I'm looking at that, let's go back to the issues and see how we've handled anything else. Implement window instead of logged message. Let's take a look at that. Take into account Fateful Toolkit style things. I think we're already doing that. Okay, make a draggable window. Oh, it's not draggable yet. Should be wide enough to display 3 files. In fact, it's going to be displaying all of them. Use a label. Really? Thank you. Use a label under the icons instead of doing an item with a count, so we can do ranges 0 to 4. For plans that can give multiples, display the maximum extraction number separately, modified by the Fateful Toolkit. We're doing so much of that. We just can't drag this window yet. And I think for a window like this, dragging it, probably just holding the shift button. We could use the control backslash system as well. Control backslash is nice because then you can drag it even if it's not visible, so you could pre-position it. Okay, yeah. So we're not quite done with that one. Take into account Fateful Toolkit. I'm going to say that's done. And then we just have this bug for handle it being equipped. Okay. So I am looking at the time, and I am seeing that we're rapidly approaching 2 hours of streaming. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to try to fix the bug where you add or equip or dequip the Fateful Toolkit and the window doesn't update. Like that should have changed to 1 to 2, it didn't. This should change 0 to 6, 5 to 8, it didn't. And we want to take that into account. So let's see how we do that, and if we can get that done today. And I think that will bring us to the end of the stream. So now's a great time if you have any last minute thoughts, questions, concerns about anything we have done, any questions you still have. Now's a great time to get them into chat, so we have a chance to look at them before the end of the stream. I'm going to take a drink, and then we're going to get into it. Okay. So, how do we know when our equipment changes? No idea. Let's go look to the API and see if we can get ideas. So, our equipment has a callback. Item equipped, item unequipped. I would like to know more. So, this is on equipment. Local player maybe has a get equipment. Get equipment, gets the player's equipment, great. We're probably already using it, in fact. Let's go to the toolkit. Is Fateful Toolkit equipped? Great, let's take a look. This is a local player equipment. Great. Okay. So, register target changed. Register equipment changed is something I would like to do. Let's see if we can learn how to do that. Function. Register that and what? So, let's grab a local reference to equipment, and we want to go ahead and set some callback functions. Now, out of the box, the LOTRO API supports single dispatch for events, but there is a way to do multiple dispatch. So if you know what the difference is between those, there is a way to do multiple dispatch, but the single dispatch is just the easy thing to do. And you can do it out of the box without including any other files with helper functions or anything. So the way this works is we're going to look at equipment, and that has a item equipped. This is a callback function, so we're going to assign it to the anonymous function with sender and args, and we can define stuff here. Turbine.shell.WriteLine item equipped exclamation point. And you know what? I want to get some information here. So we're going to go ahead and dump the sender and args because I want to see what we get. And we're going to do the same thing with the equipment item unequipped. We're going to go ahead and assign that to an anonymous function. And I want to know more about that as well. Let's go ahead and say unequipped. So if we've written that correctly, we'll get attacked by a toad. Plugin development is hazardous, you know. Okay, we're going to go ahead and unload. We'll reload, and let's go ahead and take off our Fateful Toolkit. Okay, so we can see item unequipped. The sender is that equipment thing. We can see because it has an equipped and unequipped callback function. So that's the equipment item itself. Okay, that's interesting. And the sender, the event sender, that's equipment. Okay, and then the args. That is the item, the index. Great, it's the index. And that's what we wanted is that index is 19, which should equate to the craft tool. It does. Great. Okay. So, I think we could say if args.index equals the craft tool, then, you know, the simplest thing is just handle target change. Just be like, hey, just do it again. And I think if we do the same for item unequipped, that might just do it. Let's play around with that. Unload. Okay. So, where are my plugins? There they are. Okay, we're going to load that. And what we want to do is we want to have, okay, we've got a larkspur selected. So we're going to go ahead and unequip this. And this window did not change. Okay. Why didn't it change? Okay, there's an Eye of Night there. Wait, that changed. Okay, so it changes when you equip it, but not when you dequip it. What's up with that? You know what? I'm not convinced that we got the same value for both of these. So let's slow our progress here just a little bit. I want to look at the output when we equip and dequip this. So when we unequip index 19, equip it. Okay, we do see the same item unequipped. Item equipped args includes the index, which is 19. Okay. So let's go ahead and comment that out for a minute. Comment that out. And then do a different one. Turbine.shell.writeLine, calling handle target changed. I will go ahead and do that in both of these. It is a toad threatening to attack, so I assume that's going to happen here. Yep. Okay. So, Larkspur, let's take a look. And, nope. Larkspur, so we're going to take off the toolkit. And we can see calling handle target change, but it didn't. And then if we go ahead and put it back on, also handle target change. So is it possible that we still see it as on within the callback where it is coming off? Yes, I think that is probably true. And to know that that is true, let's just use this. So for the unequipped, back off. Okay. For unequip, really? Okay. So for unequipped, let's get this and say turbine.shell.writeLine is toolkit equipped. I think the answer is going to be yes, but I'm curious about the order of operations here. So let's go ahead and unload that, reload that. So when we pull this off, toolkit is still equipped at the point that we're told it is coming off. And then if we equip it, we're being told just after it is on. So two things we can do here is we can just use a callback to come back just after this. And that might be the reasonable thing to do. But if we are deequipping the toolkit, then do not want to change how that function works. So we're going to do a callback. Okay. So what we want to do is have a control whose only job is to handle this. So this is going to be the equipment. What is it called? Hang on. Item unequipped handler equals turbine.ui.control. And the way this is going to work is we're going to say this set this thing's update function equals a function sender args, and in this function we are going to say handle target changed, and this thing set wants updates false. So we just want to call this thing once. And the way this works is in the item unequipped callback. We don't need that anymore. We don't need that anymore. If it's unequipped, then we're just going to say item unequipped handler set once updates to true. And then we're going to drop out of this function. We're done with this callback. The unequip finishes, and then on the next frame, this thing gets called, this update, at which point the unequipped should be finished. And when we handle target changed, we're going to correctly see that isFateful toolkit is no longer equipped, so the handle target changed works correctly. We'll also go ahead, I feel a little nervous not doing this first. We're going to go ahead and turn off the updates. We only want to do this once. Okay, so that's the general idea. We're going to go ahead and get rid of most of that as well. Okay, so unload that, reload this, and let's give it a shot. So we currently have 06, 06, 06, 5 to 8 total. Let's get rid of this. Bam. Totals 0 to 5 with 4 to 5 total. With the Eye of the Night, we're going to go ahead and equip it. We get to 3 to 5. We're going to unequip it back to 2 to 4. And this is 0 to 5, 4 to 5 total, 0 to 6, 5 to 8 total. Okay, so that now works. But it's an important thing. It's kind of what we were talking about before. The state of the game when your plugin is called doesn't change while your plugin is doing something. So I was unequipping a piece of inventory, but the way the API works is we are told this thing is coming off in the middle of it, so it's still on. It hasn't hit your inventory yet. It's still on your person. It's coming off. So you're told about it, but if you want to react as if it weren't there, you can either fake it out or you have to wait a minute, or wait a frame. You have to let this frame finish processing. You have to let that item remove, and then you can jump back in and say, aha, now that that's actually off, I can look at the state of my inventory as it actually is, not as it is in transition. So just something to watch out for, and that's why we test. That's why we make sure it works in a reasonable way. So let's go ahead and start doing some commits here. We're not fully done, but we've made some really good progress, and I want to go ahead and capture that. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and update it, comment. We're going to go ahead and take that. Added image ID, IDs for files. We'll take that. Main. What does that look like? Yeah, okay. We're going to go ahead and take those two and this. I'm going to say a handle equipment item equip. Okay, so we're handling the equipped and unequipped events. Sure. And we'll be able to make use of this hash in addressing this issue. Fixed in that. Okay, so we're going to close with that comment. Bam. So now we just have the window instead of the log message, which is kind of the overarching goal of this. And we're not quite done because the window itself still needs to be movable, draggable perhaps. And then we need to talk options at some point. And now's a great time to write an issue for that. New issue. Introduce options / settings. Settings. Location of window. I think that's probably it. Location of window. It occurs to me that my UI is scaled in a way that means this might be weird. Scaling / size of window. Currently based on my UI. Need to test against default size. That's a problem for another time. Options. What options? Debug output, or I guess debug output, textual output of loot to standard output /, check for that. Maybe something else. I'll be adding more to this as we go, but I'm going to go ahead and create that here. Okay. So we have a reminder that we need some options and settings, some combination of them. Great. What else do we have? We have a fly. I disagree. Thank you. Okay. Let's go ahead and clean up our target window here a little bit, and then we're good to go. All right, we're going to go ahead and delete that back color that we're not using anymore. Change which are visible, change their text. Okay. So clear the display, populate the whole display, generate the count for the file, generate the expected min max at present, show the window. Looks great. Okay. Added. Yeah. Added files to loot window. Okay. While I muse if there's anything else to do on the stream, I think I'll ride around and grab a few herbs and see it in practice. Can you loot these while mounted? Let's find out. Alright, so this should be 5 to 8 total. It was 5 to 8 total. Oh good, it's night. Can stock up on gold and stuff. It should be 3 to 5. It was 4. Another larkspur. Let's do this mornweed first. This should be 2 to 3. Great, it was. And I'm saying this because, again, the numbers I got were off of the wiki, and that's based off of community feedback. So we just want to make sure that we're not missing any edge cases just because sometimes it takes looting these 100 times to see the full range of what's possible. All right, that was 2. This should be 3 to 5. It was. This should be 0 to 6 of each with a total of 5 to 8. It was, but we can see we got that 8 in total. All right, even gleam. 2 to 3, it was 2. Well, I've got to say, this is pretty much what I was hoping for, was a display that would just give me a heads up of what I can expect to get out of an herb. Pardon me, fly, but I need this Eye of Night. Really? Okay, this should be 3 to 5. It was 4. Bone Meal is violet, also 3 to 5, so that's pretty good. Was 4. And the reason I care about these is each journal costs 25 each of golden and violet. Each lockpick costs 20 each. Not actually sure if those are worth it, but you know, if you can get them, then that's free reputation with the sub-factions that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise, and that's sort of the whole point of this end game experience. So, 2 to 3. What was 3? Okay, so we're seeing the main part of the plugin working pretty much the way I want it to be. Being able to move the window, having settings to record where the window is. These are going to be great. I'm a little concerned about the scaling of the window because, again, I think this is probably scaled up because my UI just has everything a little bit bigger to make it a little bit easier to make out details. So we're gonna take a look at that. The functionality is there. The refinements that make it, you know, nice to use and a little bit nicer for the user experience of anyone who's not me. That's not there yet. Also, there is a question to be had of, does this need any sort of an icon displayed on the screen? And I think the answer is no. There's no window to interact with. This just displays an extra window. So I feel like this is kind of an exception maybe to the way a lot of plugins work. There is likely to be an options menu. You can just go into the plugin manager for that. But I'm guessing that there's not going to be any sort of an on-screen icon. It's just the plugin's loaded, you're going to see this extra information. But I could see if this plugin evolves into other stuff as well, maybe a quest guide helper, show you where those fires are that you need to extinguish or something, that it could grow over time into something that requires that little button, or not requires, but benefits from it. But as it stands right now, I don't think this does. Okay. I would say that this is working great. And one of the use cases that I wanted for this, especially when riding around in, in North Ithilien, is just kind of scanning through as you ride through and evaluating things that you want. And that could be an interesting thing, is some sort of flash if the thing you're targeting has a thing that you're looking for. Like, I want golden extract. Maybe it'd be nice to make the screen flash if you target something that has golden extract. And so you're just riding around looking for that, where you target things, and if it doesn't have what you want, then it just doesn't light up or something. That could be an interesting addition, because if I'm only interested in golden, or primarily, like if I had 50 golden and 500 violet, then I'm probably just, and also I had like 20 minutes to go grab some herbs, then I probably just want to leave any violets, just ride past them in favor of finding a golden one down the way. So I could see that as a use case, definitely. Right now they're pretty much in sync, which is very unusual for me. Normally I have way more violet than golden, but I've been focusing on building up my golden numbers, so that's probably a part of it. Larkspur and a fly. Have you considered not bothering me? Thank you. Alright, that should be 5 to 8. It was 8. This will be exactly 3 umber. It was. Okay, I think I'm going to grab that Eye of Night and the Aven Gleam because they have golden, and I think that'll be a good place to wrap up this stream. We're going to spend at least one more stream, I think, assuming I don't get the time to do anything in the intervening time. We're going to have at least one more week here where we implement those quality of life features, being able to move the window around and whatnot. So I am back, I think, for the next 2 weeks, and then we have a bit of a early summer vacation from streaming. Oh, there's a Mornweed in there. Where we'll take a little time off. So I'm hoping to finish this before then, get it pushed out in some form so that people can play around with it, and then maybe hear some feedback where people are like, this is great, or this part's terrible, or what. But given the small scope of the plugin and how few people are actively doing herbalism at any given time, I don't expect to see a lot of a stampede of information one way or the other right away. I expect this is one of those utility ones that's just really useful for the couple of weeks while you're doing it, and then you never think of it again. But I'll know it's there. Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to park myself somewhere where I am not getting attacked, I think. Where am I? Okay, right around there, right underneath the G. Cool. And there's a boar staring at me. What's up? Okay. No last minute comments in chat, so that is everything we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you here next week, and until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.